Live now. So hello and welcome to everyone who's joining us online now for our first ever episode of the Solidarity Sessions, which is co-hosted by Palestine Solidarity Campaign in the UK and Robert by PIPD. My name is Rivka. I'm from the Palestine Solidarity Campaign and I'll be co-hosting tonight's episode of the Solidarity Sessions.
And hello, everybody. I am Sarah from Rabbit by PIPD, your other co-host tonight. PIPD is a nonprofit and independent campaigning and advocacy organization based in Palestine. The Solidarity Sessions is a new project of PSC and Rabbit. It's a live YouTube series featuring discussions with Palestinian activists and movement leaders on the front lines of their struggle for justice, speaking directly to people here in Britain to help inform and deepen our solidarity work.
Right. So we'll put some information about our two organizations, PSC and Robert by PIPD, in the chat so everyone who's joining us will know how to follow us on social media to find out more about how to get involved, how to find out about other events like this and our future sessions. But for now, I don't want to delay any further. I want to turn us directly to our very important agenda for tonight. Standing with Palestine, Gaza, and beyond, which is an urgent conversation on activating our solidarity in this moment.
Thank you, Rivka. I'm sure you guys have been following what's been happening since October 7th, but I think it's important to give a very short context before we introduce you to our great speakers that are here tonight with us. So since October 7th, Israel has killed more than 5,000 Palestinian civilians in Gaza, of which more than 2,000 are children. And the numbers, unfortunately, are rising by the minute. In the West Bank, more than 90 Palestinians have already been killed, and the number of Palestinian political prisoners have rocketed, reaching more than 10,000 people, while settlers and state violence is ramping all over the country, including historic Palestine. So this conversation is really urgent more than ever today, and it goes beyond Gaza.
That's right, and that's going to be reflected in the speakers, the three guests that we have tonight. So I'm just going to introduce them briefly. We're joined by Ahmed Massoud, who's a Palestinian writer, actor, and organizer now living in London. We've also got with us Sami Horeini, who is a land defender and community organizer in Masafer Yatta in the occupied West Bank in Palestine. And we'll also be joined by Salah Hijazi, also joining us from Palestine, who's the apartheid-free policy coordinator for the Palestinian BDS National Committee. So we're going to hear from this set of guests tonight. They'll tell us about their experiences and the work that they're doing. But given the urgency of the moment in Gaza, we wanted to start with a message from one of our comrades in the Gaza Strip who's there now. He wanted to be with us tonight, but because the conditions are so unstable, he wasn't sure if he'd be able to join. So what he's done is sent us a recording, a series of voice notes to play to you, just so we can start our conversation with his experience and perspective. So we're going to hear now a recording from Dr. Haidar Eid from Al-Aqsa University in Gaza. So if we can put on the recording now.
Hi, my name is Haidar Eid and I am a professor of cultural studies and literature at Al-Aqsa University in Gaza. I don't want to tell everything about, my personal experience, which is terrible, but just to give you an idea about what we've been going through. I mean, on the third day of the massacre, of the ongoing genocide taking place in Gaza by apartheid Israel, we were asked to leave our neighborhood. But because it was late during the day, I stayed with my family, of course, two daughters and a wife. We stayed with the neighbor. All night long, the Israelis bombarded the whole neighborhood until they flattened it to the ground. In the morning, we found out that our residential tower was still standing, miraculously. but all the flats are uninhabitable. Impossible to live there. So I had to go and stay with my brother in the north of Gaza City. I stayed there for 2 days, after which Israel warned the people of Gaza City and the north, we are talking about 1.1 million people, to head south, which we did actually after more than 3 warnings, because we understood that they were going to start their ground invasion and commit war crimes and crimes against humanity, against our innocent people. We headed towards the south, and I'm staying right now in the south, the city of Rafah. The Israeli war crimes committed against our people in the Gaza Strip are unprecedented. What is happening right now is literally a genocide, based on the definition of genocide by the United Nations. It is a combination, in fact, of ethnic cleansing and genocide. And now, since Saturday, October the 7th, 2023, apartheid Israel has flattened neighborhood, including mine, as I said, Rimal, destroyed vital bridges, roads, residential towers, and villas on top of their owners. Today in the morning, they destroyed 24 residential towers, 24 residential towers in Al-Zahra city. And water and electricity stations were also destroyed. Internet connection was cut off, and as a sequence, more than 2/3 of the population have been denied access to water and electricity. In fact, that was at the beginning of the massacre. Now, all the population has no access to water and electricity. Of course, the children, the sick, and elderly are the first to be affected. And what do we want? I mean, it's very simple. I mean, what we want is that the intervention of the international community. We want an immediate end of the unfolding genocide, a ceasefire, a ceasefire. But the United States of America and other European countries like Britain, Spain, France, Italy, etc., are supporting the ongoing genocide. In fact, the United States of America has vetoed against a United Nations Security Council resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. We want the protection of civilian lives and property, as stipulated in international humanitarian law and international human rights law, I mean, such as the Fourth Geneva Convention. It is time to take governments to task, to ask governments to boycott apartheid Israel, divest from companies benefiting from the oppression of the Palestinian people, and impose sanctions against it, the same way the international community treated apartheid South Africa. Those who support Israel and support its genocide of the Palestinians of Gaza, I'm talking about the American president and ministers, I'm talking about the British government, I'm talking about colonial Western governments in general. They are aiding Israel in committing the most heinous crime against humanity.
So that was Dr. Haidar Eid from Al-Aqsa University in Gaza. Obviously, you could hear from what he was saying. He's not in his home now. He's fleeing the bombing within the Gaza Strip as much as possible, as everyone is. But we thought it was important for everyone here to hear his voice a little bit. And I, even though he wasn't able to be with us tonight, I know it's important to him that he was able to be heard here. So I'll pass along the message that many people are listening. Now I want us to turn to the guests that we have with us tonight. So I'll pass that over to you now, Sarah.
Thank you, Rivka. And I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge the strength of the people in Gaza, that despite really having to struggle for survival with no access to basic needs such food, electricity, water, medical supplies, really they still find a way to communicate to us outside what is happening. But it's now, I now like to introduce the first speaker and guest for tonight, Ahmed Massoud, who is originally from Gaza but living in London now. We are really, really humbled to have you with us tonight. Really, thank you for taking the time and joining us tonight in such a horrific moment. Ahmed, you are from Gaza, as I was saying, and I'd really like to ask you if you could tell us what is happening there and what news you have directly from your friends and family.
Thank you, Sarah and Rivka, for having me here. This is my first time actually speaking since the event started on the 7th of October. I have made a decision not to actually speak sort of publicly or go on media, especially British media and Western media, for a good reason, which I'll talk about later on, I suppose. So it feels strange to be actually kind of here and talk about it, and especially strange in this platform where I can't see anybody else, I have to say. It's like being in Gaza, where you speak all the time and you talk all the time and you don't know whether anybody is listening. And clearly a lot of people don't about our situation. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, what Haider just said in his kind of recording really summarizes it all up, to be honest with you. But just to add to that, as we speak now, and I did say this to Rivka, that if anything happens in my area or home, near my home, I would have to jump out because my family are in great danger at the moment. And as it's happening right now, I'm hearing reports that there is white phosphorus being thrown on Jabalia camp, where my family lives. So I'm incredibly stressed about that. And of course, white phosphorus, as you know, is internationally banned. It should, you know, is something that Israel should be held accountable for. But I mean, to just talk a little bit about the daily struggles here, I've got a big family in Gaza. Most of them are in the north, in Jabalia camp. And like Haider's family, they were asked to leave, or they were told that they had to leave and go south. Now they couldn't, and for the simple reason for that was the fact that they couldn't actually physically leave to the south. I have other family members in the south, in Khan Yunis. All my uncles and aunts are there, but actually they couldn't find cars to take them there. And also they bombed the people who were going and traveling to the south. So how could they do that? And it's not like the south is actually a safe space or a safe area for them. So I find it incredibly ridiculous that they're telling the West and the media that we're actually asking people to go to a safe space, but that safe space does not exist at all. My sister lives in Al Nusayrat, and today was bombed heavily. There was a shopping mall that was bombed in there, lots of houses. Al Zahra city, where I was there actually in May, I was actually walking down there. It's a beautiful neighborhood, very trendy, kind of right in the middle of the Gaza Strip. You can get south or north easily. Was all completely destroyed. So I just find it, strange that they talk about this safe space in the south. At the moment, like, I don't know how my family are surviving, to be honest with you. I cannot imagine how they are surviving. There is no electricity at all. There's no water. There's no food. They have to queue for hours to get some water and get some food and basic supplies as well. And the hardest thing has been for me is obviously the kind of lack of connection and mobile network or coverage. So there is no mobile network now in Gaza at all. They have to rely on Wi-Fi mostly. And that sort of comes in whenever there is electricity, and the electricity only comes when they charge their phones and their batteries. I've got one of my brother's neighbors has got solar panels, so they manage to charge their devices from there. So every night I go to sleep. Well, I don't go to sleep. I'd stay awake all night, to be honest with you, because I'm just thinking about what I'm going to wake up to in the morning, you know, whether they'll be surviving or not. I've now asked them to try and, you know, just miss call me or just send a message or whatever every night, every morning to make sure that they're still alive. the level of fear that people are living under at the moment, including young children. A couple of nights ago, last night and the night before, but the night before last was pretty much the worst. And I was on the phone to them all night, just listening to the amount of bombs that they threw on Gaza. It was just unprecedented. Like, for about 8 hours, they did not stop for 1 second. And for a tiny strip with like a massive population of 2.2 million people, this is just terrorism, to be honest with you. This is just plain terrorism. My nephews and nieces, my young ones, were just crying their eyes out. And it's just the level of fear where you don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be you next. So most of my family now, just to go back to it, are in Jabalia camp. They're sheltering with my brother, so I'm hoping that they will be safe. But I also know that given how random the killing has been and how the targeting of civilians, they could be next. They could be next any minute. And this is the fear that I'm living with at the moment. And the trouble is that nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about this in the Western media at all. And on the contrary, it's all about, just Israel has the right to do this, to self-defend. But how is that possible, to just actually self-defend by killing innocent civilian people who have nothing to do with this? So yeah, this is the situation. But I want to say also that this situation has always been going like this. It's not new in a sense. So Gaza is very, very used to it in a way. I was there in May, and there was bombing in the first week of May. It was with Islamic Jihad, the other party, but a lot of people got killed at the time. I don't think, and many people will know how many people were killed at that time, but it was in the hundreds as well. So, and before that, we had another round of attacks. The last full-scale war was in 2021, in May 2021. Before that, it was 2014. So it's continuous. My entire family are there. My parents, my siblings. My dad passed away in February, and I couldn't go and be in his funeral because it takes me 3 days to go from Cairo to Gaza. 3 whole days to fly into Cairo, take a taxi all the way through the Sinai, be stopped at Egyptian checkpoints. The Rafah border sometimes is open, sometimes it's not, and then you queue on the border for hours, then you get there. So by that time, I couldn't really get physically in time for my dad's funeral. And that is our reality. That's the reality that we've been living in for a long time. There's been the electricity, it's only 4 hours a day, even before of all these events happened. Water is also scarce. There were so many reports that even the UN did about how within a few years that there will be no drinking water in Gaza. So, I find it surprising that people are just suddenly now waking up to this reality. It is, of course, intense, and it's a war crime what's happening right now, but it's kind of like it's what's been happening plus, it's just an intense version of what has been happening for a long time. Of course, the intensity of the killing and the injured is completely different, of course. But I think Gaza has been slaughtered, has been slaughtered for a long time, and it's been bleeding for a long time. And we've lost so much of our young people, elderly, and children before. And again, this is not something that is what Israel is trying to say. It's just because of what happened on the 7th of October. This is a systematic sort of oppression of people, putting them under what is often described as the biggest open-air prison in the world. And again, when you look at the response to what happened on the 7th of October and how Western media sort of was very complicit in it, in a sense, you do realize that this is actually part of a bigger plan, that to kind of put Gaza into that position and to try and besiege it as much as possible, and waiting for that one thing that is going to happen to take over completely, to land grab, to expand Israel as much as possible, their territories and border, because that's what it's all about, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ahmed. It's so important for us to hear both about what's happening to your family and friends. So thank you for bringing that to this, but also that context that you talked about, because as you said, I mean, this didn't start 2 weeks ago, and that's part of the problem of the media response, amongst many other things, is that it's as though, you know, suddenly something happens October 7th, as though the siege began then. So I think that context is really important. You just kind of finished by talking about land grabs, and I think maybe that's a moment for us to turn to our next guest, Sami, who's speaking to us from the West Bank.
Hi.
Hi, Sami. How are you? And welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. I guess many of the people who are tuned in now maybe know you already, but like Sami is based in Masafer Yatta, South Hebron Hills, which has already been for a long time under intense attack from Israeli settlers and the military. As we were saying, and Ahmed was also stressing, is that all this goes way beyond October 7th and beyond Gaza. So Sami, you are in Masafer Yatta, and we would like to ask you what's been happening lately, and especially in the past few weeks.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Yes, thank you for hosting me in your panel tonight. Can you hear me well, first of all? Okay,
Yes,
great.
we do.
Great. First of all, really, I would like to start with really God bless all the martyrs and the kids who are killed in Gaza with these tons of bombs that Israel is raining on our people in Gaza. And before everything, we really hope this hypocrisy of the world and of the West that will end very soon toward the Palestinian rights and Palestinians living under occupation in West Bank, in Gaza. Really, since the 7th of October, here in the area we are living in Masafer Yatta, we are here since decades, are facing the ethnic cleansing by Israel, by the occupation, and the process is still going on. But what's the difference between all these decades and today? That it's and these days that Israel is claiming it's the war days, or the war, it's in a war state. The situation completely changed. That the settler now, they are the one who are rolling here, who are the one that giving directly the orders, and they are now, after Ben Gvir decided to give the guns for, as they say, civilians, but they are giving them for the settlers to come and to start to attack Palestinian villages. We talk about small villages, civilians who have nothing, that the settlers start to come into the villages, especially like the village of Maghair al-Abid, when in the 10th of October the settler stormed the village, and they are claiming with having this kind of soldiers dress and starting beating the village there. It's like a really small family living there. They started beating them up very violently with the guns, and then threatening them to leave, otherwise they will kill them, and then they run away. Then we talk about just a few minutes ago, really, the Muhannad al-Jabarin is 21 years old, and his father, the Israeli soldiers. Now, when we talk about soldiers, that they are the one who are settlers, are dress of soldiers, coming to the houses, starting to attack people. So now Muhannad just was transported to the hospital with the Palestinian ambulance. He had a very big fracture and injuries, he and his father, with no reason, because the soldier just break into the house and start beating them. This is what's going on. As I said, it's not the first attack or raid to the village or to the houses in Masafer Yatta. This is since the 7th of October. They started with this brutality behavior just to terrorize the people and to make the goals that they want to make. That this is the time, the perfect time, that the settlers are using this, what they call state war, to to do the crimes and the policies that they want to do. Like they started to jump out to randomly and crazily in a lot of land to build tents and steal more land in this period, in this time. They start the settlers to shoot and to kill people and execute people, like what happened to my cousin Zakaria Al-Adara. He is 28 years old. Zakaria is from my village of Twani. He lives here, and the settler just came out from Habat Ma'an outpost, which is very close to my village, which is about 100 meters. They were attacking the houses, and then they walked. One settler walked with M16 towards Zakaria and shot him in the stomach without anything happening. Just literally catch the gun and shot him. Zakaria still in the ICU, and he was, he was shot with dom-dom. It's also another prohibited type of bullet that the Israeli settlers and soldiers are using right now. He was transported to the hospital and in the ICU. He's still in the ICU. And because of the closures, like all the West Bank now under big closure by the Israeli army and by the Israeli military, we are literally in a siege. So Zakaria was transported. He took half an hour to reach the hospital in a civilian car because the ambulance was stopped by the Israeli soldiers, which is in the entrance of the city of Yatta, which is we are very close to, which the ambulance have to drive to come here. The ambulance was stopped. The ambulance people were like the soldier take off their clothes to prevent them from reaching here. So he was transported with literally very long way to reach the hospital, and he bleeded so much until he reached the hospital, and he needed 14 units of blood. All his blood was completely out, and this is what's going on now. As I said, it's a literary siege. We have a lot of checkpoints. We have a lot of crazy shooting by the military, that the Israeli military right now just using the live shooting against any Palestinian without any kind of hesitating. It's just immediately. This is the immediate act that they are doing. My family as well was, for now, for example, I can't go up my house for 10 meters. Otherwise, the soldiers now, they put a lot of tents around my house to keep everyone inside the house, to keep everyone inside the villages, to not move around, to not go at all. And when my dad, the settler, came with the soldiers as well to come inside the land, my dad went up there and they started attacking them and literally shooting towards them directly. Yani literally no one of my family was killed or hurt that day, but they were beaten by the guns and by the end of the guns in their hands and their bodies. But luckily they are still, it wasn't so, I would say, bad. I mean, it's literally not compared at all with what Palestinians are living in Gaza, but still, the Israel, when it declared the state of war, it declared the state of war in all the Palestinians in Gaza, in the 48, and also in the West Bank. Like even now, in Palestinians, even just quick thing about 48 Palestinians also cannot make posts. Also here, like now we got detained in checkpoints, and everyone who is making posts in his phone, they start like with the threat of the gun to confiscate the phone and oblige the youth to open it, and who have any kind of social media posts to raise awareness of the situation. He got grabbed from the car. He got literally beaten up and very violently, and then take the key of his car and let him in the road for hours. And then after 5-6 hours, the army come back and throw the keys, and then people can go back home, or they got sent back to the place where they went out from.
Wow, Sami, that's really intense to hear that. And I think, as you've been saying, I mean, it seems like what you're saying is that, in a sense, I mean, the war is on the entire Palestinian people, and what's happening in Gaza is being used as a while the world attention is on there, but obviously not helping. At the same time, settlers and the soldiers are really accelerating the land grabs and the violence in the West Bank. It sounds like from what you were saying that this is happening all over the West Bank also, and it's happening in Masafar Yatta. Of course, again, it didn't start 2 weeks ago there, but can you say a little bit more about what you're hearing from other parts of the occupied West Bank?
Now, like the movement between the cities in the West Bank is completely paralyzed by the Israeli occupation. All the cities in the West Bank are under siege and under lockdown. All the entrances are locked down. Israel, since the 7th of October, killed in the West Bank 95 Palestinians, and about 1,800 injuries are now in the hospitals. In the West Bank, it's, as I said, it's mainly the siege that they are trying to paralyze literally the movement. There is a lot of arrests. Today, a 25 years old Palestinian was arrested 2 days ago, was killed, was dead. He died inside the Ofar prison without any understanding of what's the condition and how he died. We are assuming totally it's under the torture that the Israeli occupation authority is using now on the high level of violence they're using against Palestinians. We have also 2 days ago another old elderly man who is 58 years old, who as well was he died inside the Israeli prisons without also any explanation of how they died. So it's also the Palestinians who got arrested from the West Bank. They got killed, they got murdered inside even the prisons. It's literally, as I said before, what we are living in Musafir Yatta, it's totally what every Palestinian are living now in different cities in West Bank. People have to find roads to go out. People are really living under very difficult life situation. This is because Israel announced the war in all Palestinian in West Bank. This is briefly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sami. Really, we are aware that, as you were saying, it's a war on all over the country, but it's not two-side war. I think we have to still remind this all the time, because we are not talking about two equal parties fighting. It's just one party taking a war against civilians mainly, and this is it's not well stated in global media usually. Thank you very much for letting us know what's going on in Musafir Yatta and the West Bank. And for all what you were saying, and also Ahmed was saying, I would like now to introduce you to Saleh Hijazi, the apartheid-free policy coordinator with the BDS movement. Hi, Saleh.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Rivka.
Thank you for joining us tonight. And I'd like to ask you a bit more about the BDS movement and what are the main goals and activities, and especially I'd like to ask you why it is important, especially in the current circumstances.
Thanks, Sarah and Rivka, PIPD and PSC. And I mean, in setting up to answer your question, make the link between what we've heard from our dear friend and colleague, Dr. Haider Eid in Gaza, what we've heard from Ahmad about himself, being denied the access and the connection with his homeland and his family, and what his family is going through in Gaza, and what we've heard from Sami about the colonial violence and ethnic cleansing that is happening in the West Bank, the further fragmentation. I, for example, I'm living in Ramallah. I cannot meet Sami right now. I could have perhaps, before, with all the difficulties of the checkpoints in the military structure and so on and so forth, but I couldn't, for example, see Dr. Haider Eid because of the separation. And Ahmad could not visit me, for example, here. So this oppression, this systematic violence, systematic killing, the massacres, the ethnic cleansing, the oppression is all part of what Ahmed called, a system of oppression, a system that hasn't been in place for over 75 years. And which, Palestinian human rights organizations, Palestinian grassroots organizations, intellectuals, thinkers have been describing as a system of settler colonialism and apartheid for many, many decades, but which has come to be recognized as such through a global consensus that includes states, human rights organizations, academics, and so on and so forth. And this is a deeply rooted system. History didn't begin this month, and it didn't begin with the criminal siege that was imposed on Gaza 17 years ago, and it didn't begin with the military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza 56 years ago. It goes beyond. It goes to 1948. the ethnic cleansing during what Palestinians call the Nakba, then the establishment of the state of Israel as an apartheid entity, with the intent, and I think this is very important, the intent to eliminate the indigenous Palestinians from their homeland. And so, genocide also that Haidar is speaking about didn't just spring up. It's always there, and the intention to eliminate was always expressed by Israeli and Zionist leaders before the establishment of Israel, during the establishment of Israel, and after the establishment of Israel. So today, when we hear, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu describing what is happening as the children of darkness fighting the children of light, or the war minister describing Palestinians as human animals and that should be treated as such, and then generals and ministers and members of the Israeli parliament calling for the elimination, the eradication, the flattening, and so on and so forth. All this genocidal rhetoric, this didn't just spring up. It was there, and these practices of systematic killing, of ethnic cleansing, of torture that we've heard from Sami, very serious suspicion that these two men, the young man and the older man who died in Israeli prison, and we've been getting a lot of reports of torture, increased torture that is coming from Israeli prison, also didn't just happen. They've been happening for decades. And the reason why they've been happening for decades is because the international community has been complicit in these crimes that are being perpetrated against the Palestinian people and in this system of colonial oppression, and particularly in the global West. Now the genocidal war that is being launched on Gaza, is being carried out in Gaza, is being fought with Western weapons provided by the US and the other allies of Israel. Israel has, over these 75 years, been shielded from any kind of international accountability. It is always set above the law. It is a black hole, if you want, of international law because of these Western powers making it an exception. It's because of the complicity of institutions, universities, research centers, so on and so forth, in these crimes, and the complicity of corporations, of investing in Israel, of investing, including in the weapons industry and the surveillance industry, and so on and so forth. And that's why then you have this colonial apartheid system that is carrying genocidal wars. Now, of course, kind of most spectacular, most violent, most visible in Gaza is because of this complicity of the international, of these institutions, organizations, and corporations. And the BDS movement works to end this complicity. It was established in 2005 when the largest coalition of Palestinian within Palestinian society was formed, calling to boycott Israel, divest from Israel and companies that are complicit in Israeli crimes, and impose sanctions against Israel until it basically complies with international law, and that the system of settler colonialism, military occupation, and apartheid is ended. And with the ending, of course, you have the realization of Palestinian rights as stipulated and as should be protected by international law. The right of Palestinian refugees to return, the right of Palestinians for self-determination, and the right to equality. So until then, this non-violent movement works to end complicity. Now, the movement is anchored on three main principles. It's the indivisibility of justice, which and here perhaps Nelson Mandela's quote about the Palestinians can help explain. When he said, "Our freedom following the fall of apartheid regime in South Africa," Nelson Mandela said, "Our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians." Meaning that an injustice one place, like in Palestine, means an injustice everywhere, right? So it's justice all around, or there is injustice all around. And that connects then Palestine also with all struggles around the world for freedom, justice, and equality. The second principle is the intersectionality of our struggle, that our fight against the system of colonial oppression and domination of apartheid is also the fight of others around the world who then not only share the objectives, but also are under the same threat. Israel exports its colonial oppression elsewhere, like to India, to Africa, exporting spyware, weaponized spyware of weapons, training death squads, and so on and so forth, that really then works to oppress and repress the people around the world. So just one example. And the third, which is, I think, very important for a UK audience, is the ethical duty of do no harm, that you should not allow harm to be done to other people, or for that harm to be done in your name to other people, and that you should do all that you can to end this harm. And here back to kind of the point of complicity. So the BDS is a Palestinian-led global nonviolent movement that works to end complicity. And at these points, it becomes very crucial, because Israel is not able to carry out its genocidal war in Gaza if it wasn't for this complicity by the international community. And so it becomes, imperative. It's become super important that then people act in an ethical way to ensure that this war is not carried out in their name, that they have nothing to support that war, and they stop their governments, their institutions and organizations from supporting the genocide that is unfolding.
Thank you, Salah. And I think the points that you said are really important, as you said, for a British audience in particular. Our main demand right now, our political demand as the Palestine Solidarity Campaign and the wider movement here in Britain is an immediate ceasefire now. But as a part of that, we're also asking for a military embargo on Israel. And some of what you said, that it's not just that Britain is standing by and watching. The complicity is the diplomatic support, but it's also millions of pounds worth of weapons that are exported from Britain to Israel every single year that are used in these moments. And both Ahmed and Sami talked about some of the prohibited weapons that are being used, the white phosphorus and the other weapons that are used in the West Bank. So when Britain exports weapons to Israel, they're being used in the context of that kind of illegal war, and of course the horrible and unethical and immoral killings and attacks that we're seeing all the time. I'm going to say more about what people in Britain can do to get involved a little bit later on, but I think we want to go to one last round of questions to hear from all of our speakers again.
Thank you, Rivka, and thank you, Saleh, again. I think it's true what our guests tonight were all saying, and it's not started yesterday. And also, like, Palestinians have been resisting in many, many different forms, most of them non-violent actions, from advocacy to academic research to traditional advocacy, grassroots movements, really. It's been 75 years that we as Palestinians have been resisting, but we get on the spotlight just when armed actions are conducted, while there is a lot that we are doing as nonviolent resistance. So going back to Ahmed, who's a great writer, playwright, actor, and organizer. I think the list can go on. I wanted to ask you, what is the special significance of that work and cultural work more in general, especially in a moment like this?
I mean, I think it's incredibly important, and it's the same as the BDS movement, I suppose, that Saleh was talking about. I think in the discourse of trying to understand what's happening, and what had happened before, and what will happen as well, in a sense, to try and read the future a little bit. I think engaging with culture is really the gateway to kind of open your eyes around it. I think Rivka is going to talk about what you can do to help Palestine and Palestinians on the kind of campaign level. But for me, like, the BDS movement is an incredible way of doing it. You know, it's great. It's your choice as a citizen, as a person, to boycott, you know, the Israeli products, etc., as one example. But it's also your choice as a, you know, British citizen, or not just any citizen around the world who believes in justice and human rights, is to engage with Palestinians and their culture and their story as well, and to hear from them. And this is why the kind of cultural movement is very, very, very important, because it crosses to the hearts of people and their minds quite quickly and easily. And also the other really important part in there is that people start to see us as humans as well. So that's strange, isn't it? It's strange to say that people actually start to see us as humans. Like, I didn't even think I had to say that, but actually I do now, given how we've been represented in the media recently. I remember I was doing a play a few years ago in 2018, when the Great Return March started, when we were marching peacefully on the fence and trying to demand our right to return to our homes. And it was a really, really difficult moment for me at that time. And I remember somebody, after the play has finished, and we did the play and we put the play on, and somebody came out, bought a copy of the play, and asked me to sign it. And as I was signing it, she opened her bag and she had an Israeli flag in it. And she said, "I just wanted to let you know that I came to disrupt the play. I wanted to put the flag up in the middle of the play, but I couldn't, because the play was very good and I could connect to it and the story and the human story in that play." And I thought, wow, okay, well, I will sign it then for you, you know. And I signed the book, and I thought, like, how amazing culture is to kind of be able to cross to that other side and to touch people's hearts. As Palestinians, we have incredible writers, from Mahmoud Darwish to Ghassan Kanafani, to mention a few from the kind of older generations. Now, you know, loads of writers who write in Arabic and English. I'm having a Freudian thing where I can't remember the name of the writer or who wrote Minor Details, but he's now recently been denied a prize in the Frankfurt Book Fair because she's Palestinian only. Read her book as well, so support her as much as possible. And I think this is really Adania Shalabi. This is it exactly. Somebody reminded me on the chat, by the way. I didn't just remember it. It's one of those moments when you just forget what you had to say. Apologies for this, but the point is that I think culture just really opens your eyes around a different culture, different people, different nation, how they think, how they eat, how they, you know, dress, how they, everything around it. In my writing, I try to emphasize on that a lot. So a lot of my books, for example, when I'm writing a story that's set in Gaza, I really make a point of mentioning the names of the streets, the names of the buildings, because as I know very well, and as you now know, those disappear very, very quickly in there. And I find it surprising because sometimes people, you know, come to me and ask me, sometimes people at work, and just say, "Oh, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know anything about this situation and all of this." I was like, how could you not know about it? How could you not educate yourself? And why did you allow it up to this point? So I think, yeah, culture is really, really important. And Palestinian culture, as you know, is very, very rich and very vivid, whether it's food, music, dance, you know, writing, literature, performance, art, a lot of things. I recently started a collective called the Pal Art Collective, and we just recently put on a festival of performing arts, a Palestinian festival of performing arts, while my family was being bombarded in Gaza. And it was a really, really difficult position to be in, and really incredibly hard to do it. One of the hardest things I've done in my life, where I was on stage and anything could have happened to my family for that 1 hour when I was performing. And I found it important to put it on, because if I didn't tell the story, I think that space would have been gone from me. We would have lost it as Palestinians and as humans as well. I had to speak to my mum and actually get her permission. It's like, I'm doing this play, I planned it. Can I still put it on? I get my mum's permission for everything, but no, I did actually, because I wanted it to be important to her as well, and I wanted her to think of me and her son while she's sitting there under bombs, is to think of something else. And I actually completely forgot to send her pictures of the performance and the whole festival. And yesterday, under bombardment, she reminded me, we were chatting, and she reminded me, she was like, where are the pictures? I want to see them. And I sent them to her, and she was very happy flicking through them, and she liked 1 and 2 and all of these things. So I think culture makes us humans and makes us connect to other humans. And I think everybody needs to engage with it as much as possible. I think this is one way of helping Palestinians, is to listen to our story, to connect to us as much as possible. There are so many amazing artists in Palestine and in Gaza right now actually producing art. One of them is a really incredibly funny 13-year-old boy who's doing amazing, like, funny clips, like comedy, almost like stand-up comedy on Instagram. Who, his name is Abdul, and he's just so funny. He's making a lot of people in Gaza laugh, and that is art, and that is, it's so human. And I really wish him the best, and I hope that he continues to survive. That's all I'm thinking of right now.
Thank you, Ahmed. And definitely for people who are here in Britain, but also elsewhere, definitely support the work of the Pal Art Collective. I think there's a link in the chat, and I totally agree with everything that you've said. I mean, now more than ever, it's so important for us to be hearing the Palestinian story in all of its different forms in as many places as possible. And I think that's a part of our work as a solidarity movement as well. Sami, I want to turn to you next. You're working around the clock to defend your land. You described some of that before. You're a community organizer. I wondered if you could say something a little bit about what are people in Masaferiyata doing right now to protect themselves and to combat Israeli violence, and how can people that are listening today keep up with the news in Masaferiyata and support your work?
It's a very important question. It's also bring us to the to what Sarah said about especially the point of when we say about declaring war against Palestinians, which is there is no really equality between the two power that we are talking about. We have Palestinians who are here, mainly civilians, have no weapons, have nothing to literally defend or shoot or protect themselves. In front of a huge military power that starts with settlers, with heavy guns, with military, with all this stuff backed up together against the Palestinian who is alone living in here in his land to protect his land. And this is in the face of this huge terrorism and this huge violence. Palestinians continue to decide to steadfast and stand in their land, to defend in their land, to protect it. It's a very big struggle. This is existence, is resistance, is to protect the land. It's not enough. It is the current situation also now, and for so many years, even it's so difficult now. We have so many challenges. Some families are scared and they are looking for a place to go to be safe. This is for the family, for the children, but also mainly most of the people are remaining here in their land despite all this terrorism, despite all the violence and the situation they are living in and with, and even with the war that everything have been raised and became more crazy. The title is here in Masaferiyata, it was like before, we will never leave, we will continue to defend and protect our land. But this is also have a lot of responsibilities also from the world outside, because with all what we live, we continue to face that also people are continuing to say Israel have the right to defend itself. So the criminalization and the crimes of Israel raised every day against us. This is completely make us completely very angry and very upset. And we literally, ask and demand from everyone, from the free people around the world, to continue to stand for the Palestinian cause, to stand for Palestine. And we were very proud to see, with all what we are going through, the huge demonstration that was in the UK and in different countries in the world. This is a very strong message, was to us, was really giving us a lot of support, and we hope that it will continue to change this really brutal way of the West, how they are dealing with the Palestinian cause, to really stand for Palestine, stand for justice, stand for Palestinian people. And thank you.
Thank you, Sami. And it was truly heartwarming to see streets and square full of people. Sometimes it feels a bit lonely to be a Palestinian who's in the diaspora, and it can feel isolating and unheard. So sometimes it gives you a bit of energy to know that people are there and government don't necessarily represent them or not fully. So I agree with you, and we all keep supporting the struggle. And in terms of actions or more practical things, Saleh, I really wanted to ask you and to help people orienteer themselves. I'd like to ask you, what can people do in their day-to-day to support our struggle for freedom?
Hi. Thanks, Sarah. Look, our now top priority for all Palestinians, all of us here living in colonized Palestine, and all who are outside, half of the Palestinian people are in forced exile in refugee camps and in diaspora. All of us, with all who stand with us in solidarity, who have affinity to the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality, is to stop the genocide in Gaza. Stop the genocide in Gaza. This is the top priority, and really the most urgent, important action right now. Having described what I described before about the complicity of the international community, of the powerful Western nations who are part and parcel of this genocidal war that is happening. They're part and parcel of the ethnic cleansing in Masafer Yatta and so on and so forth, because of the weapons from the US and the UK, because of the machineries, companies like JCP and others that are being used to raise lands, demolish homes, build settlements, so on and so forth. It's that we only have the people around the world. We have, as Ahmed was saying, our humanity that is expressed through culture. We have our sheer existence on the land, as Sami was saying, and we have the solidarity of people all around the world. And this is what we, have to work with. And it is this solidarity right now that we are relying on to stop the genocide. Just as we were speaking, the UN Security Council is meeting. This is usually the body that would come and enforce, a ceasefire that would interfere in whatever context, that would kind of come and condemn and take action and so on and so forth when it comes to all other contexts around the world, except except Palestine, right? The hypocrisy and the double standards. So we don't have these powerful nations to come and enforce a ceasefire, but we have the power of the people to really then force their governments to change their position and to take that action. We can just only force it through the people. So what people can do is look at what solidarity groups in your countries are doing. In this instance, for example, in the UK, what PSC is doing, what PSC is announcing. Join these actions, join the mobilization on the street, put the pressure on the government, expose the complicity and the hypocrisy and the double standards. That is very important, and really force the change that we want to see. A change in the sense of not having the genocide happening and really addressing the root causes. Now, and everybody, and going back to kind of BDS and the boycott, and for example, what Ahmed was saying, is really in the day-to-day, ensure that your actions, your consumption, whatever, does not contribute to apartheid, genocide, and the crimes against Palestinian people. Boycott Israel, alienate Israel, boycott Israeli products, produce, and so on and so forth. Boycott the companies that are complicit in the genocide right now, and join these campaigns. These can be everyday actions. For example, the sports brand Puma is boycott Puma for its complicity in Israeli crimes. boycott the supermarket. I'm guessing it doesn't happen, it's not there in the UK, but Carrefour, for example, HP, the computer and technology companies. These are companies based on research it's very well evidenced and that they are complicit in these crimes against the Palestinian people, and therefore these can be everyday actions of boycott. So joining the mobilizations on the ground, putting the pressure on the government through parliamentarians, through institutions, on the street, boycotting these companies that are complicit in crimes. And I think very importantly, and this is what you're doing here as well, elevate the Palestinian narrative. Have Palestinians speak, give the platform, ensure that this context, the 75 years plus of settler colonialism, apartheid, and military oppression is always set as the crucial context for understanding and addressing whatever is happening, including the genocidal war right now. Because without setting that context, starting history from the 7th of October is not only ignorant and foolish, but it is also hypocritical and really complicit in then denying Palestinian history, denying the Palestinian story, and diverting away from being able actually to address the root cause here, right? The oppressive violence, the violence of the oppression, because violence it starts with the relationship of oppression, and so to end all violence, we must end oppression. And to deviate around from that, or to cover up, or not to contextualize, not to see the 75 years, is really trying to do that, is obscuring the truth, and therefore, no one will be able to kind of deal with it appropriately. So, sorry to repeat, mobilize on the ground, put the pressure on the government. We need to stop the genocide, and as a first step, ceasefire immediately, guaranteed by the UN in Gaza. And boycott and alienate Israel, including through the boycott of these brands and companies that are complicit. That's what you could do.
Thank you very much, Saleh. And I think that's a perfect way for us to end. Before we do, I want to just highlight a few things that people can do this week here in Britain, following what you've said, and also really appreciating what Sammy said about how important it is for people in Palestine also to see our massive marches for Palestine here in Britain. Last weekend, we had over 300,000 people taking to the streets in London. It was the biggest march for Palestine in British history. And I think that demonstrates something that people were saying, even with our government that's lending complete support to Israel's genocidal war against the Palestinians. Even with all of these companies that are complicit, hundreds of thousands of people in this country take to the streets, holding Palestinian flags, raising the Palestinian demand for a ceasefire now and for an end to the complicity and the oppression against them. We're going to be marching again this Saturday. It's really important for everyone who can to come out to the streets. We want to send the message to all Palestinians that you're not alone, that the solidarity movement is here with you. Of course, the march is not the only thing to do. It's a part of a larger solidarity movement that we have to be a part of. We're going to put a link in the comments here that has information about how to get to the march this weekend, this Saturday. I want to see everybody there. We also have an email action that will allow you to email your MPs to make the demand for a ceasefire now and for an end to the complicity in Israel's oppression of Palestinians, and especially in this horrible moment of extreme violence against them. With that, I think I want to close us up first by thanking our guests very much. It's really, really important to hear from all of you today, and it was very powerful, I think, to have your voices with us. So thanks to the speakers who are with us today. And Sara, it'd be great to hear more about how people can continue to follow Rabit by PIPD's work too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rivka. You can follow us on our all social media platforms. You can find us as Rabit by PIPD, and we are trying to listing as much as possible on Instagram all actions and demonstrations all around the world as we hear about them and we are informed about them. So for those of you who are not based in the UK, please refer to that. And please also feel free to write us at info@pipd.com. If you cannot find your nearest solidarity group, we would be very happy to connect you with them and know how you can be active and really do what you can in your capacity. And we also have on our website, thepipd.com, some resources you might want to use and educate yourself and find out more about the general context in Palestine. And thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Rivka, for doing this with us tonight. And thank you for our amazing guests. I think everything you've said, it was both heartbreaking, but also energizing. So we keep on, we don't stop. And this is what we've been doing and we will keep doing until freedom.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone who joined us tonight, and stay tuned for our next episode of the Solidarity Sessions. We'll be coming back again in December with another episode with another set of guests, and always we'll leave actions for people to take at the end, because we want this to be dialogue and listening from the voices of Palestinians, so that we're moving that into actions that we can take as a solidarity movement. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. Hope to see you all in the streets in London this weekend, and we'll see you soon.